guys, back with an update on a truck you haven't seen in a while. This is the Crispy Spider build. Now, this truck is using those Italian-made pure Spider axles and a Crispy chassis, which, if you remember, I made some time ago as well. Now, since then, we've got this truck to a pretty close to a rolling chassis so far. What you'll see here is the pure Spider axles up front. It's got 2.2 pure Spider wheels on it, stretched with 1.9 pit bull growlers. Stretching these pit bulls onto these 2.2 wheels was a task, being that these are a 3-piece beadlock and just the 5 front screws are what holds the whole thing together. But we did get that on there. It did finally get done. Now, you will see that we are using the Axial Yeti cage and body system on this truck. I was able to machine a small bar for the rear and weld that down to the chassis. So in the rear, the clamp style body mount that is used on the Yeti that you see over there on the wall is used here as well and is held in place by 2 body pins. So with those 2 body pins in place, I can hinge the body up a little ways. Not a very far or all that convenient amount, but more than not at all. So that is what's functioning as the rear body mount. The front body mount I have not sorted out yet, but I do want to remove this cage and show you guys what we've got going on underneath. So being that the first update on this truck was so long ago, we'll go over again what we've got underneath here. Now again, I had mentioned that we are using the pure Spider axles up front. This is a solid axle that's machined for a high clearance style design. So the inner axle shafts pitch down from the center ring and pinion down to the axle shafts, giving you a bunch of clearance underneath of that front pumpkin. A nice design overall, and it's not the most scale design as far as a solid axle goes. Not that there isn't high clearance axle designs similar to this, but this is definitely a performance axle. On top of those axles is a 7990 servo. It is machined for a larger servo mount like that, although I do believe that they are going to machine one with a standard size servo now as well. This large servo did cause me quite a fit with this front end. I ended up cutting off the front of the chassis that I had on here before to make clearance for the sides of the axle servo mount to flex underneath of the chassis, or cycle underneath of the chassis. So that ended up going off, and from there I'll now have to build another new front of the chassis to come up and act as a front bumper type setup with that Yeti cage. Now, up front also you can see the shocks, and you'll see that they're orange and you may not recognize them. But what these are the Kyosho Velvets, and the orange that you see are some custom one-off, only set ever made shock parts for these velvet shocks. These were done the same time that the Harley Edition transmission cases were done from Super Shafty. He only made 25 of those transmission cases, and this is where one of them lies. One of them is in my mud truck. Got a couple of them, here and there that I know of. Now, I haven't bolted the rear shocks onto this truck yet. I still have to get those built. But the Crispy chassis, what the goal of it was initially was to build a truck that stayed low, actually even lower than a stock SCX-10, but had more up travel than you could get with an SCX-10 in stock form. So lowering it 3/4 of an inch almost from stock, but then getting even more up travel. So that's why the front has this big, what used to be a full C notch, but now is just a half because the front of the chassis is gone. Then the rear, the chassis was cut off just beyond where it started to kick up. And then from there, I built this entire tube structure that went onto the rear area here. Also, that is what captures those rear shock mounts. I built a desert style rear bumper for this truck that, since I haven't touched this thing in a while, I do have a little bit of surface rust on this thing. I'll have to get that cleaned up before I finish up all the details and all that and it gets its final paint job. Now, I still do have plenty of work ahead of me. That front end is definitely going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time for me to wrap my head around with how I want to make sure that I clear that servo under all of the suspension cycling, as well as tie that into some sort of bumper that looks good, matching up to that Yeti cage bodywork type setup. After I do that, this thing will need the final links built for it and a bunch of that other miscellaneous stuff that you guys know how that goes. One other thing is that I do have 2 servo winches here made by KMS to integrate into this as far as a front and rear winch that this truck is going to get. It's got the free spool function on both of those, and I think I've got how I'm going to work that out up front. In the rear, I don't think it'll be as big a deal. I've got this nice convenient tray that I welded into the chassis, and I think that will come in very handy for those servo, or for that rear servo winch at least. So we've made progress with this build. It's not done yet. I'm sure Brett wants it done, but stuffing these axles underneath of this chassis, which it was not designed for, was definitely a headache. I knew it was going to be a headache. I should have told him that it wasn't going to work, but in the end, we'll make it work and we'll make it look good. So that's just an update on this truck. Wanted to get that done, get that out to you guys, and show you some of the things that have been going on around here in the shop in the absence of all of these videos. So with that, guys, we'll see you on the next one.